Hello, and Happy New Year to you all. Hope you're all doing well. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're tuning in from. Welcome along to the first post of our IGTV interviews in 2021. Please feel free to give your country a shout out. As always, post up any questions. We'll do our best to cover those as we go along. If this is the first time you've joined us, then welcome along. Once we finish talking today, then please also check out our previous interviews over on IGTV. You can also find them on YouTube and on Facebook as well. My name's Andy. I've worked at Heritage Parts Centre for 13 years, and my job involves meeting people, sharing the stories about their vehicles and people's businesses, and basically the passion for the hobby. Just see if we can get our guest in there, please. See if that'll work. Today's guest is the man in charge of a national institution, and he's been at the helm for over 10 years. The publication in question's Practical Classics magazine, and the gentleman of interest is none other than Danny Hopkins, who's magically appeared there at the bottom of our screen.
Hi.
So, welcome along, Danny. Thanks for joining me this afternoon.
That's okay, no problem, Andy.
Nice to see someone face to face for a change. And
it's really weird, isn't it? It's really unusual.
So, let's dive in. Most of us at Heritage, and probably those people who are watching as well, have some kind of automotive interest beyond just the realms of VW and Porsche, for us guys at least. So let's start with, what's the oddest or most unusual car that you've owned?
I love heroic failures. I'm a big fan of cars that just aren't quite right from new. So okay. I've deliberately aimed at owning a number of cars which people would categorise as being just bad ones. And the funny thing is that they've all got loads to recommend them. So, for instance, the first one I owned was a Fiat Argenta, which I bought back in 2000, which was a non-runner when I bought it. And it was a non-runner when I sold it as well. So that didn't last very long. The next one up was an Austin 3-litre, which I loved. Should never have been built. Issigainers hated it. The BMC wanted a car which was a luxury flagship. It could never really become that with maxi doors.
My dad's best friend had one.
Yeah,
my
they're
dad
amazing cars.
Did some weddings and stuff, and he had one.
Yeah, and I love that. I rescued that from a front garden, put it back on the road, and it's still alive, and I still know the owner, still in touch with them. One of the ones where I think, I shouldn't have sold that. The next mad car that I also owned a Vauxhall Royale, which is just ridiculous. It's Opel Senator, and Vauxhall wanted to call it a different name, so they just printed some different badges. It had the velouriest interior I've ever seen. It had ginger velour interior. Ginger velour sounds like a 1930s film star, but mad. Then I had, I think, my favourite crazy car that I've ever owned. I owned a Renault Avantime.
Okay,
That as a car which was an answer to a question that no one was asking, which is, do we want a 2-seater sports MPV? And the answer to that is no, we don't. But they built it anyway, and hooray for them, because it was the most marvellous machine. It was a V6 3-litre Prestige, and it had what I called the sun button, which is in the middle, right above the screen. There's a button. You press it, and all the glass disappears. The roof disappears.
Oh, wow.
And it turns into kind of an open 4-seater coupe. I just love that car. It was brilliant. But also, because it was an auto, and Renault auto boxes are made of cheese, it began to slowly fail in the auto department, and I literally didn't have the money for repair, so I sold that on to a good home. So those are the weirdest cars that I think I've owned, and of course I owned a lot of classics as well, and I've owned a lot of bangers. The ugliest car I've owned, I still own, and it's a Fiat Multipla. Now, It
You don't
does
want to say that too loudly in public, surely.
I know. Well, the thing is that yes, it looks like a pair of mating frogs, right? But it's actually brilliant. It's a brilliant piece of design, and I will put my flag in the ground here. If this Agonis was alive today, that's the car he would have designed, because it makes maximum use of the exterior space available to create a maximum interior space. 6-seater, brilliant, clever design. Just looks like it's fallen out of the ugly tree. And you make sure you park it down the road, not outside your house. But apart from that, it's a piece of genius. There you go.
So, any VWs and Porsches along the way?
Yes, I have owned VWs. So my first VW was a Mark II Golf GTI 8-valve, and that was brilliant. I had that for about 4 years. It was a fantastic car. I met my wife while I had it, so obviously that was part of the tick in the box for her. Maybe, who knows? She's not listening.
Definitely wasn't a multipler.
It wasn't. No, I wouldn't have taken that on the first date. That's for sure. I also had Mark. This is again another one. You know, we go through on Practical Classics. We like to look at cars which are going to be the next generation of classic cars, and we always try and get them in first. So 3 or 4 years ago, I got a Mark III convertible, and I think they're great. And I got it for 20p. And again, screwed together brilliantly. Not as rubbish as people. The thing is, when you're talking about a Mark III, and I've had a Mark III GTI as well.
Yeah, I had one, for 3 or 4 years. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, when you're talking about a Mark III GTI, right, and you read the reports, and it's like, it's not as good as a Mark II. It's flabby and baggy. This is written by journalists who've been taking it on the Evo Triangle and giving it the absolute beans, taking it right to the ragged edge. In normal use, a Mark III GTI is a fine vehicle and not slow. So I'm a bit of a fan of the Mark III. Again, I suppose it's my love of vehicles which have got a maybe got a bit of a black mark against their name. I've owned a Passat, which was just a diesel. It was the 1.9 diesel. What an engine! What an engine! What an engine! Again, probably the most practical car I've ever owned. What else have I had? I had a Type 35 campervan for a bit. I went, in a previous life, it was a Westphalia. In a previous life, I was an actor, and I bought it for a summer to go on tour around the southwest. It was brilliant. It was just the best thing to do. It was it was mouldy and not great, but it was a perfect vehicle for that summer. I followed the tour that I was on. I just lived in it in different campsites all around the southwest, and it was a fantastic thing. So I loved that. I nearly owned a Santana.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I nearly owned a Santana, but didn't quite make it. But I really wish I had, because my friend in Austria has got one, or had one back in the day, and I went touring around Austria with his family in one of those. That was great.
That sounds like the title of a terrible book that you might be for sale at Christmas, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
I nearly owned a Santana.
I nearly owned a Santana. Yeah, it's like Boring Men of the World, isn't it? I nearly owned a Santana. Where you go? So what else have I had? I've had a Polo bread van when I was at university, which is, again, I went from a Maestro to a Polo bread van, and I love British cars, and I love my Maestros. I love my Marinas before them, but you get into a Polo out of a Maestro, even though they share a gearbox. Hello.
Oh really?
Yeah. Oh no, it was a Golf. Was it the Golf gearbox was in the Maestro? I can't remember. Anyway, the you just understand why the British car industry disappeared. It's the build. It's just a different universe in terms of build quality. What other VWs have I had? Well, the magazines had a bunch. We had we rebuilt a Type 35 for the magazine a couple of years ago and took that around the country. That was good fun. Anyway, I had a Beetle, but I didn't restore it because I got scared. So there you go. And I will have a Beetle. I will have a Beetle again, an original Beetle, because I'm governed by this quite often. I don't know, probably the rest of you guys probably feel the same way. So I'm often governed by what my wife will accept on the driveway, and a Beetle would be fine. So I'm going to have one sooner or later.
So what have you got in your collection currently?
Okay, so the collection currently, Jensen Interceptor.
Pulls out a scroll.
The what?
Pulls out a scroll.
Oh, listen, it's I've got the best excuse in the world, which is it's my job. Right, I've got a Jensen Interceptor, 6.3 litre.
Nice.
It's an Interceptor 2, which I restored myself over 10 years, and that's catalogued all out through the magazine. I've got a 1950 Riley RMA, which I restored myself, which is catalogued in the magazine. I've got a 1956 Riley Pathfinder, which is another one of those cars which in legend is dreadful. You know, they called it the Ditch Finder, but I love them. I think they're brilliant. I think it's Gerald Palmer's finest design. I've got a Triumph TR7. I've got a Triumph 2000, which is which is the car. All the rest of them can go. I'll keep the 2000 because that was my granddad's car, and it's been in my family since brand new. My granddad was brand new. It lived with him. He died in '94. Then it went to my auntie, and then it was left in her garage for about 20 years until eventually she let me have it, and I've restored it and put it back on the road, and I've rallied it, and it's a family heirloom, so that's never going anywhere. I've got at the workshop. I've got a Renault 14. How about that? I told you I love the unloved. The Renault 14, which is going to be my next restoration project when I've finished my Morris Marina. Now, my Morris Marina is the second oldest coupe in the country, and that came to me via a reader. And we're currently restoring that, putting it back on the road because this year's 50th anniversary of the Morris Marina. No piano jokes. I've got a Fiat Multipla, as I've mentioned. I've got a Saab 9.5 Aero Hot, which is absolutely brilliant. I've got what else have I got outside? My wife's got a Nissan Leaf, which actually is quite nice to drive. I've got a Mazda MX-5, and I've got a Jaguar XJ8, which I've just bought. Which is, again, I think everybody should have a Jag just to smoke around in, just as a thing to have. So I think that's my lot. Pretty sure it is. Yeah, I think that's my lot. That's my list. I don't know how many there were there.
Awesome. Yeah, I did count them. But yeah, that's quite a You've not really got a type, have you, apart from slightly off left of centre? I
like stuff that's a bit unloved, but I like cars I've never had before, and I've had quite a lot of cars. So I'm sort of on a continual. I'm a total tart. There are a couple of things in there which are very special. So the Interceptor was the car I always promised myself. Ever since I was a kid, you know, when you play top trumps, if you had an Interceptor, you'd win unless it was fuel economy. And I had the little corgi toy when I was a kid, and I remember saying to myself, I will have one day, so I've got one, which is great.
Yeah.
And the Triumph 2000, which is a family thing. I also like cars that have got an interesting engineering as well. I'm fascinated by good engineering, or bad engineering as well.
What's the criteria for a vehicle to be kind of included in Practical Classics? Is it a time frame of manufacture or a kind of a market value? Is there like a peak where you're like, if it's worth more than 20 grand, we're not paying 50 grand or whatever?
Here's the official line. The official line is, if you love your car, so do we.
Nice.
And the official line is, we're very democratic and open-minded. The unofficial line is, oh, that's interesting. It's basically, we're probably the least snobby magazine or publication you'll ever come across. If you like it, we do too. I think the only thing we don't really get stuck into is the kind of more extreme customization, so low riders and that kind of thing, just because other publications do it better, and it's a whole scene on its own. And I think we start getting stuck into that, we trip over ourselves, and we get it wrong as well. But we've got we love modification, but we love really clever mods, stuff like engine swaps or stuff that keeps the car looking stock, but it makes it a really, really amazing Q car. Things that make the car better to use in everyday life. I suppose if you were going to go for a definition, a lot of the other car magazines will feature the cars that used to be on your wall. Practical Classics features the cars that used to be in your mum and dad's driveway. That's the difference. And I think it's typified when we go on photo shoots. So we'll go on photo shoots with, Golfs and Maestros and Jags, but saloons, not necessarily so many E-types. And we'll have people come up and talk to us, and they will engage us in conversation about their memories of those cars. Now, I've worked for other magazines where I've gone on photo shoots with supercars, and people come up and go, wow, that's an amazing car, I love them, I had it on my wall. And it's a very different kind of mindset, because our cars, PC cars, are cars that stimulate memory and nostalgia. And they're relatable. They're cars that have touched your life. I think the cars that come up in other magazines are aspirational, and there's a different vibe going on there. So a PC are cars which you might remember, your mum and dad might remember, or your grandparents might remember. And it's also about cars that you can fix as well. We're already into 80s and 90s and even noughties cars. We're into, we've done features on fixing ECUs, or at least finding different ways around the ECU problem, car electrics and computers. So a lot of 80s and 90s stuff. It's remarkable, actually. They're pretty much plug and play. You can fix them. Whereas, when I started on the magazine 20 years ago, everyone's going, oh, as soon as you get into 80s and 90s stuff, it's all going to finish because you can't fix them. Well, you can, especially if you've got a tame teenager. It's brilliant. They know their stuff.
So what did you want to be when you were at school?
What did I want to be when I was at school? I always loved engineering, and I wanted to be, I suppose it was a toss-up between an actor, which is what I became in the end, or a car designer. So I would sit in lessons and I would literally draw cars and get in trouble. So those are the two things that kind of crossed my path and gave me a bit of aspiration. And I think the acting just came along and took over. But I remember towards the end of the 90s, I was doing okay. I was earning a living. I was doing mainly theatre work. I wasn't really breaking into telly, which is where the money is. Yeah. And I always had a car on the go, and I was always fixing cars up. And I read Practical Classics. And I remember having a chat with Will Holman at one of the shows, and Will was the editor. He was working on the mag at the time. John Pearson was the editor. And just thought, oh, hold on. I love writing. I love old cars. Hey, here's a great job. And I banged on their door, and I sent them letters, and I wrote test articles, and in the end, they let me in. And I started a whole new career. At age 30, I stopped being an actor and I started being a writer. And it was pretty hard work for the first couple of years, but it was worth it. I'm so glad I did that, because firstly, I could get a mortgage. And secondly, I am doing a job which now for 20 years I've gone to work and no 2 days have been the same, and I always look forward to it. And you can't say better than that. Very, very lucky boy.
Absolutely. So we've been helping you guys out at Lancaster Insurance recently as well. Can you tell us a little bit about your Type 2 project?
Yeah, so we like doing charity projects on the magazine, charity restorations, really. People do it on the telly and stuff like that, and we do it in the magazine as well. And we got into bed with Lancaster Insurance, who are not literally, obviously, and
not all of them.
Not all of them at the same time, because you need a really big bed. And they're good guys. They are an insurance company that puts its money where its mouth is, which hats off to them for doing that. We budded up with them, and because of the anniversary of the Type 2 last year, we wanted to do one last year, but of course then last year happened. Yeah. We were meant to have completed it at the NEC, and by April last year we realised that just wasn't going to happen. We've got our own show at the NEC, the Practical Classics Classic Car and Restoration Show. We were meant to be we'd restored the shell and painted the shell, and we're meant to be starting off the rebuild process at the Practical Classics Classic Car and Restoration Show in March last year, but that didn't happen. And because we can't really get down to the workshop to work together on it, because we're all in different bubbles, we go down individually one by one and do it bit by bit, and it's gone quite slowly. However, the good thing about that is we're getting loads and loads of content, whereas before it would have been quite an intense process, and we would have got slightly bigger features, but it would be done really quickly. Now we're spacing it out, and we've got the engine rebuild ongoing right now with you guys. And so we're actually getting more content out of it, and more how-tos and more diary features. But this they asked me to go and find one, and I did my best. But Type 2s are a naughty car to buy, because I'd walk up to it and go, "Oh, that looks good," and I get about I don't get underneath, and there's no metal left. It's like, they really hide their failings very well. The number of times I went to see 5 or 6, and they look great. They look great on the surface, and as soon as you scratch the surface, then you find that they're basically one giant rust sponge. And this one looked pretty good, and it was we wanted one sort of under 10 grand. So we're not looking for good ones, obviously.
Yeah.
And this one looked okay. It's 1979. Started off as a panel van. It's got the Webasto. It hasn't got the pop top. We've got the Webasto style roof, which we wanted because we want to be able to drive it into car parks. And it had a kind of homemade interior, but it still had rock and roll bed, the stuff that you want, but it wasn't massively kitted out. We wanted a nice, easy to use, flexible van that wasn't too heavy, so it could, make the motorway miles. This one looked pretty good, and I maintain it's still pretty good. We haven't had to do an awful lot of work on it. There's some Heath Robinson stuff underneath. Like somebody had made their own jacking points, and they're not pretty, but they are strong. And there's the front corners underneath the pedals. That's gone, so we've replaced that. There was work to do, which we don't mind, which is great. And eventually we got it painted up and sent it off to CBR Restorations, who did a brilliant job on the paint. And we've returned it to its original colour, which is the sky blue colour, with the name of which I've forgotten. So we found the original colour under the paint. We basically returned it to original. It was on Porsche wheels. It was lowered. We've returned it to as close to original as we can without making it into a panel van again, obviously. And basically that's so that we hopefully will raise as much money as possible when it goes to sale, because the important thing is two things. We're going to do a great big trip with it when it's done around Britain. We're going to have a competition in the magazine for readers to nominate their favourite beach, and then we're going to visit the top 5 and the Britain's favourite beach. We're going to have a bit of a dub fest, mini dub fest there, and of course that couldn't be done last year, so that's another reason why we had to slow down. And then once that's done, we're going to hand the buckets out as well for our charities while we're out on the road. And when that's done, we're going to go to the NEC hopefully this year, November this year, and we will auction it at Silverstone Auctions. And the money raised is going to go to Prostate Cancer UK is the charity. That's Lancaster's nominated charity, and it's we're really happy to support it as well. And it's one of those cars which it's a nice emblematic car. Loads of people, everybody loves them. I don't know anybody who doesn't. It's got a sense of fun about it. And when we're out on the road and when we go and visit those beaches, hopefully we'll bring a load of people along with us as well. It's the other thing as well, and I think this is really important, because people are saying, "Oh, why did a VW bus? Hasn't that got its own scene anyway?" And I would say yes, it's got its own scene, but when you put it in Practical Classics, it means that a whole load of other people from all around the classic world get a gateway into that scene.
Yeah.
So if it was in just VW mags or VW websites or via VW portals, it would just be talking to the people who know about it anyway. When it's in PC, you've got a display which is going to be seen by Triumph fans, MG fans, Jag fans, Ford fans. We're all going to have a little look, and it might invite a few more people into the scene. In which case, it's good for VW.
I think obviously that's why we're kind of having a discussion. Really, obviously, we doing these things, these kind of live interviews and stuff. It's kind of like, obviously we've chatted to a lot of the people we kind of already know, and we start sort of branching out and kind of talking to people who are sort of moving in other circles, and hopefully bringing everyone together and finding out a bit more about what other people are doing. So awesome.
I'm just going to try and give myself a bit of extra light, because I think that's better, isn't it? It's getting dark. It's snowing here now. Hurrah!
Oh, crikey.
There you go.
If you got a phone call from your boss tomorrow saying you could add one more money no object feature into your magazine every month, what would you include?
Whoa, that's good. That's a good question. Do you know, the thing is because we're the biggest selling mag, we've got,
unless you've got an unlimited budget already and you're bathing in pound notes. And
we don't have an unlimited budget, but we have a reasonable budget, which means we can do stuff other mags can't. So we can do these lovely multi-car shoots, and we can go on trips and things like that, and there's money behind it, which is you know, which is great, and it means that we've got fresh content every issue. I suppose that what I would love to be able to do, Andy, is to completely re-kit the workshop and extend the workshop as well, so that we could do more actual work there, which is meaningful. I would love to relocate the whole office to the workshop, have the mezzanine, live where we do the work on the cars. And I think the other thing as well is to have some kind of budget for restoring the cars as well, because, for instance, we're working with Lancaster Insurance, and they're you know, and they're bankrolling this restoration to a certain extent. We're putting some money towards it as well, but we're also working with partners such as yourselves, and obviously, because it's a charity project, it's really great that you're working with us and helping us. But I'd love to have more money to do restorations which aren't reliant on third parties, then you can just take your time and focus on what you're doing.
Yeah.
Other than that, I just love them to pay for me to have my own racetrack, and I could test classics on that racetrack at any speed I like all day long. Money no object, and we could call it Danny races cars on his private racetrack. There you go.
Sounds great.
That's about as blue skies it can get, isn't it, really?
So obviously we're back in kind of a state of lockdown at the moment. How's that affected your job with regards to kind of gathering content, and also have magazine sales suffered at all, or are you surfing away?
It's a really interesting one. Magazine sales have suffered. All the magazines have lost copy sales because people can't get out to the shops and buy them.
That's true. Yeah.
A lot of people buy their magazines when they're traveling, so airport lounges, airport shops, railway stations. No one's traveling, so a lot of. But we've really outperformed the market. We are down, but we're down nowhere near as much as some other publications. I think the reason for that is because our readers spend most of their life distancing, including me. I spend most of my life in quarantine in the garage, so it's no change for our guys. In fact, the funny thing is that during lockdown, we've had more of our readers finish more of their projects than I have known since I've been editing the magazine. It's been really successful for them. And in a way, we've got the perfect hobby for the current situation. You know, we are isolating, we're at home, we've got our sheds, and we're going to work in them. And I think actually it's not been too bad for a lot of our readers. Obviously, it's appalling for everybody, and we can't use the cars, but as much as we'd like to. But no, it's not been too bad. We've had a reasonable run of it. Sales have been up or maintained, and our advertisers as well. A lot of our advertisers saying we're doing all right. You know, we're supplying kit, and people are buying it still. One of the things I think has changed, we're not seeing so much in terms of sales of consumables. So, for instance, I think people who sell oils and brake components, that kind of thing, probably not doing quite so well because their sales rely on use. But restoration stuff, cleaning stuff, people are selling. It's all right. And I think as long as we get out of this in the next couple of months, I think a lot of the classic car businesses will have survived quite well, including us. So no, we're doing okay. We had to go home overnight. We literally left the office. We work in a big swanky office up at Peterborough. We went home overnight. We've been working from home. Luckily, we've all got hooked up to the internet, so we're okay. One thing I will say is, imagine if this had happened 10 years ago, you know, when we weren't quite so proficient with internet supply and you know, Zoom hadn't been invented. Imagine what it would be like, be a nightmare. We'd be really isolated. So luckily we've got the technology we're using right now. We've got Zoom, we've got Teams. We're cracking on and doing it. And in fact, actually, you know, some of it has been better. You know, I think, you know, I've been able to focus a bit more on certain things, because when you're at work, there's always somebody coming up to your desk saying, "Can you adjust?" When I'm at home, I just don't have to answer the phone. It's brilliant. So I'm actually able to focus a bit more.
I've stayed away from this question with other guests, but I think given your background, and I think the answer will be pretty kind of crazy, really. What's your dream 5-car garage?
Ooh. Okay. I would. Do you know what? I'd like some unusual stuff, and it wouldn't be glamorous. I'd start my 5-car garage with a Mosquito. Okay. The Morris Mosquito, which is the Issigonis prototype that became the Morris Minor. It's basically a Morris Minor, and also I like it with the flat 4 engine that they originally designed for it. And if you go to, if you go to any early pictures, you can see it's slightly narrower as well. If you look at any Morris Minor, there's a kind of ridge down the middle of the bonnet. That's because they realised it was too narrow, so they basically chopped it in half and expanded it by a couple of inches. That's why there's a little lip on it. So a Morris Mosquito, I'd like one of those, please. I would also like. I've got to say, I'm a Luton boy, so I'm a bit of a Vauxhall pervert. I would like a 3098, a 1920s 3098, because it's better than Bentley. Beautiful, beautiful car. So one of those, please, sir. I've got my Jensen Interceptor, so that would definitely be there. I've
lost you. You've muted yourself.
A huge. Have I muted myself? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I lost you. Yeah, I lost you after your Jensen Interceptor.
Oh, sorry. Okay, Jensen Interceptor, Jaguar XJ220, and lovely, finally, I think a Gordon Keeble, because they're just beautiful.
Okay, yeah.
There you go. That's off the top of my head, but it will change tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I won't hold you to it, and I've not got the funds to pay for it anyway, so it's purely hypothetical. So, you mentioned your show earlier. So, as the editor, obviously being involved with the Practical Classics show, is that a label that you stick on afterwards, or is that kind of your team really get involved with what goes on and kind of hands-on, and you decide what the show's about?
Yeah, we work closely. Clarion Events organise the show. They're the same people who organise the NEC in November. But as far as content is concerned, we're at all the meetings. We'd love to do loads more, but obviously, the budgets, and we've got to Clarion have got to make some money out of it, and they've got to be able to pay Bauer to help as well. But we provide content, we promote it. We also connect people together to come and provide content for us. We do the live stage build, which is really important. Over the weekend, we usually build every show we've done so far. We've built a car over the weekend. And we are a kind of conduit as well for communication, so that if Clarion are getting stuff wrong, or if they're missing out stuff, we can hopefully give them a prompt, and equally, if they need stuff from us, they can come and ask. So it's a really lovely we have a really good relationship with them. They don't get it right all the time, and neither do we. But we're always, we're hands-on. We couldn't do it in any other way. I wouldn't have the magazine's name above the door unless we were involved in that way, because it would damage the brand. One of the things we're changing for this year, we're going to change how the live stage is done, and we're going to call we've got a little sort of roundabout and call it Classic World, and we're going to have cars actually driving around the audience. The audience are going to be in the middle.
Cool.
There's going to be a little road around them, and the cars are going to come in and drive around them. It's going to be carefully controlled. Lollipop ladies, or men, but we're actually going to have a bit more of an active feel to it. I remember when Excel a couple of years ago did that road down the middle of the show. Something a bit like that, because one of the things that frustrates me about particularly the NEC shows is that the most exciting moment happens at that show the moment the doors are shut on the Sunday night, and that's when everyone starts their engines and moves the cars and they beat the whole. That's when the show gets interesting and everyone's gone. So we want to do something which brings it to life a bit more. And of course, we'll have the celebs on stage. We'll have the cars being worked on. We'll hopefully build a car over the weekend as well. So we are involved. We are hands-on, and so that's the way it shall continue. So
are there any, kind of following on from that, really, are there any famous people you've met or sort of opportunities you've had that have come about because of your role at Practical Classics?
Yes, when I started on the magazine, Fuzz Townsend, who does Car SOS, was he was the technical editor of the magazine, so I worked with him for a year, which was brilliant. Okay. He's a rock star, he's a mechanic, he's a presenter, he's just, if anyone was ever made to present a car show, it was Fuzz. He's a great guy, and he's one of these people who truly does walk the walk as well as talking the talk. But I know Mike Brewer pretty well. I know Ed China really well. I know Ant. I know Paul Cowland as well. Paul's a lovely guy. I really get on with him very well. He's a smashing fella. And again, all of them, without exception, say what you like about any of them, they are all car guys. They don't get involved in this stuff without being car guys. And actually, particularly, I think when you're on telly or when you're talking live, if you don't know what you're talking about, you don't last very long because it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
So yes, it's a really good set of people we've got actually presenting car TV at the moment, and we're really lucky. I mean, Jimmy DeVille's another one. Jimmy's done a bit of work with us, and he's a smashing guy. I've really got a lot of time for Jimmy. We're hopefully going to be doing a little bit of Land Rover stuff with him soon. But yeah, very talented bloke.
Cool. Any trips you've kind of managed to wangle because of your position behind the scenes at particular places, or
not? It's funny, the stuff that I get to do. I could go on different trips every weekend. There's always out of lockdown, obviously. There's always a junket to go on. There's always something to do. But to be honest, a lot of them wouldn't be relevant to my readers. And there's no point in me going off somewhere and not being able to provide content for the magazine. So I say no most of the time. I don't usually go on the sexier trips because it wouldn't be relevant for what our readers want, which is a bit of a pain. But that's life. But what we do get to do is if we do really want to do something, we get to we probably get good access to the right people. So for instance, it was the 40th anniversary of the Vauxhall Victor a few years ago. And we managed to get Vauxhall Heritage to bring out all the Victors. So we got them all the way from the Victor F-Type right the way through to the FE. And we lined them all up and blah, blah, blah. And we took pictures of Luton Who, which is where the original publicity shots were taken. And during the day, I just happened to mention Simon Hucknall. I said, could we get into the factory, do you reckon? And he went, oh, I'll ask the guys. And then as the day went on, I went, do you reckon we could park the early F-Type next to the end of the line where the Vivaros are made? And Simon went, oh, I'll ask the guys, see what they say. And I said, do you reckon we could put one on the line? Like be the first time a Victor's been on the line for like 40 years. And he was like, I'll ask the guys and see what they can do. And it ended up with us having an F-Type Victor, like really early one, on the line in the factory at Luton, the same line where the original Victors were built, which now builds Vivaro vans. And it went Vivaro, Victor, Vivaro. And then the last question I asked was, I said, Simon, do you reckon you could ask quality control guy to PDI it? and Simon went, yeah, right. So we got PDI'd as well, got a pre-delivery inspection. And it failed on everything. But I mean, it's one of those situations where you're in a privileged position. You think, what if I was reading the mag? What would I like to see? I would like to see that. So I just asked, and it happened. So that's those kind of days when those things happen and it works. That's the best. It really is. I think the other thing as well is we do our own trips, and for us, the most important people that we meet are the readers. I mean, I love it when I get the opportunity to meet my heroes. That's wonderful. But actually, meeting the readers is fantastic. And the best thing about our readers is they've all got stories to tell. Now, often classic car people are quite introvert, and so you've got to talk to people for a long time before you get the real stories. But everyone's got a story to tell, and every car has a story to tell as well. So the really interesting stuff when we go on trips is when we go on trips and we meet the readers and their cars and we dig into the stories that they've got. That's what really gets me going. It's fantastic.
Perfect. So stories. My grandpa used to have a Sunbeam Rapier, and he had that as, it's kind of an early one. He had that as his daily driver for like 40, 50 years. Brilliant. Whenever I used to go and visit him, I'd pick up Practical Classics because he subscribed. And there was the Rust in Peace section, which has obviously been going for years and years and years. Yeah. And for those kind of unaware, it's basically scrapyard and barn finds. People kind of take the snaps, sent them in. Do many of those cars ever get saved? Do you hear back of kind of things?
We've featured a few. And while I've been editor, I think we featured about 3 of them. People who've seen it in the magazine, got in touch with Richard Lawson, who puts together Rust in Peace. He's got in touch with the original owner, and then the car's been rescued. So it does happen.
Awesome.
My thing is I mean, these days everyone's got an iPhone, everyone's on the telly. I'm amazed they still find them. They're still out there. They're everywhere. And we've got too many to use in the mag. And so I'm amazed they still keep coming in, but they do. And thank goodness for that. I think it's a fabulous part of the mag. The one thing we have to be careful of is sometimes we look at them and we go, somebody's trespassed to get that. And that's when I have to exert a bit of editorial control, because one of the things about being editor is you get to put editor under your name, and it's great. You get paid the big bucks, obviously. But you also end up you're the one who goes to court when somebody wants to sue you. So and that's never happened. So hopefully my editorial judgment's been reasonably good over the years.
Yeah.
But yeah, rest in peace. Love it, and they still keep coming, and I'm still amazed.
Would you rather have a day in the garage or a drive out in the countryside? And also, would you rather do a car show or would you kind of spend some time on track?
Track rather than show. I've got to be honest. I find I get frustrated with shows. My favourite bit of a car show is driving there and driving back. I love meeting, but actually, interestingly, I'll qualify that. Really rigidly organised car shows I find a bit constricting. But I love going to just like informal meets. Love that.
Yeah.
That's much more fun. Hold on, I've run out of light again.
Got a power cut. Put another quid in the meter.
I've just had my computer's said to me it doesn't want to. Sorry. Hold on.
You got a candle.
Hello. I'm going to just fire up my computer again because my computer was doing my face. This proves it's live, doesn't it?
Yeah.
There you go. Right. Yeah. So car shows for me, if they've got a really good vibe, like the Practical Classics one does, it's a really friendly show, then great. I'm not a big concoursey kind of guy. And I find sometimes shows are a little bit constricting. So I like informal meets or really friendly shows with lots of activity. And that's what the PC show tries to do. Everyone's got to come and do something. That's one of the rules.
Yeah.
And what was the other question?
So yeah, car shows also. Oh yeah.
Driving the country, day in the garage. That's it.
Yeah.
At the moment, day in the garage because it's horrible out there. And in summer, driving the country. Am I allowed both?
Oh yeah. Oh, all right. It's fine. If you could be the guest editor on any other publication for a month or two, what would you fancy getting involved with?
Oh, Magneto, because it's like, you know, it's uber. It's like you get to meet princesses. So yeah, I like to just for a month. I'll wear all the flash clothes. I'll go and meet the sexy ladies in Paris. I'll hang out. Actually, it's not like that at all. But still, I can live and dream, can't I? One of the VW mags as well, because you meet the best people. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed, this is true. What's your thoughts on electric vehicles and electric converted classics?
Okay, electric vehicles. Yeah, at the moment, particularly in towns, it's kind of makes sense. I've got a Leaf. I bought a Leaf, which we use mainly for my wife to go to Cambridge and back because we live just outside Cambridge. We've also got solar panels on the roof, so when the sun's out, you can say that you're driving the sunshine, and that's kind of funky. I think that it's inevitable we're going to probably have to find another fuel source because I'm not sure that the battery technology is there yet. I don't know if it ever will be. If we can find a better battery technology, then electric vehicles have got legs. Otherwise, I wouldn't be surprised if hydrogen or something like that, or a hybrid, takes over. I think the days of unlimited burning of fossil fuels are done, they're gone. And that's not a bad thing, you know. I think as long as we're always allowed to use our vehicles, I don't have a problem with that. Converting classic cars to electric. We've actually, the next issue of Practical Classics has got 7 cars on the cover in a massive shoot, and they're all powered by electric.
Awesome.
And we're asking the question, are they still classic? And
I didn't know that, but that's a beautiful advert for you.
So we've got London Classic Car Company. There's a VW Type 2 pickup. You know the brown one with this bit that can't remember the name of the company that did it. It escaped me. So we've got the chap from Wales who's been on the telly. Yeah. He brought his 700 horsepower Beetle to the shoot and did the longest 11 I've ever seen from any road car because it's got 2 Tesla motors up its chuff. I must admit, for me, and it's a personal thing, I like a car to have an engine. For me, it gives it a beating heart and a bit of life. But if I was living in the centre of London and I still wanted a classic feel, I can tell you now, I would probably be looking at an electric classic now. I wouldn't want a rare car because I think rarity is important, but if I had a Mini with an electric engine, or a Beetle with an electric engine, or a Morris Minor with an electric engine, if I was living in the centre of a big city, I think that would be the way forward.
I've driven an electric Beetle, conversion one. I've driven two actually, up at Jack's garage in London.
Yeah.
And Beetle Cabernet 1303. And actually, once you kind of got obviously used to the fact it just keeps going, was great. Handled really well because of obviously the weight under the floor, went round roundabout like it was on rails.
Yeah.
And the guy I was with was like, let's go round again. Let's go round again. I was like, I'm not driving round and round this roundabout in a bright yellow Beetle Cabernet. I think people will realise. But the only time you kind of realised you were in an older car was when you kind of then went to just press the brakes and you kind of got older car braking rather than.
Yeah. That's very true, isn't it?
Apart from that, it was really good.
I think that the one qualification I put on this is some cars have got great and iconic engines, or engines that are absolutely intrinsically part of the character of that car. Funnily enough, I think the Beetle is one of those. The flat four is an icon, and it gives you an iconic sound and power delivery as well. Any V8 is like that. And I think something like a 2CV is like that as well. It's got a special feel to the engine. And I think that electrifying those cars really does take something away from them. But when you've got, a car with an engine which doesn't really have that kind of iconic sound or feel, an A-series engine under the bonnet of a Morris Minor maybe, although you miss out on the part, or a Citroen DS. I mean, I think a Citroen CX, for instance, nobody really cares about the engine. It's all about the car and the suspension and how. So actually, an electric CX would be probably better, dare I say it. So it depends on the car as well. But it's a good debate to have, and it's a debate that won't stop. We've got John Simister writing our feature. It's 12 pages, properly in depth. He's a big skeptic, so one of the two of the cars there really impressed him. So there was a Ferrari 308 which has been converted to Tesla spec. It's faster than the original. It handles better than the original. And John just said that he would happily drive that home. So there you go.
Cool. And a hypothetical question to finish on, really. If you could drive any car on any road with anyone, dead or alive, what, where, and who?
I would drive a D Type with Sterling Moss around the Le Mans course.
No one's going to argue with that, are they?
You know what, as well, and this is, here you go, I'll do one name drop.
You're going to tell me you've done it?
I've driven a C Type with Sterling Moss in the passenger seat. And that was when the building where the magazine is currently produced from was opened by Sterling Moss back in 2001. And I was I was 31 years old. I was starting out in the magazine, and the boss man said, "Can you find us a car and go and pick Sterling up from the station?" So I blagged the C Type. It was a Proteus replica, but it's a good one. And I went and met Sterling at the station, and then I handed him the keys, and there was already a crowd around the car by the time we got out. And then when Sterling got in, it was like out with the cameras. And he drove from Peterborough Station to our offices on the outskirts, around the parkways and the dual carriageways. He fingertip control on the steering wheel, stepped the back end out. He told me he much preferred driving replicas rather than the real thing, because the real things are often kept in museums and preserved in aspect, whereas replicas are actually proper drivers' cars. And it was an amazing drive. And then, of course, when he opened the building, he had a few sherries, and he came out, and I had to drive him back to the station. And the entire building followed him out. So there were 400 motoring journalists, and me having to reverse a C-Type out of a parking space next to Sir Sterling Moss. I was more nervous than I'd been on my driving test. It was terrifying. And of course, first thing I did, shoved it into reverse and crunched the gears. And I got a massive cheer. It was just awful. And then I set off with him, and we were going down the ramp onto the parkway, and he went, "You can give us some beans, if you want to." And I went, "All right then." And he was very, very, very generous and very lovely. And here's the mark of the man, right? A year later, I was at an NEC evening meal thing for the NEC show. And on the table that I was sitting on was a Sterling Moss. And his place was 2 away from me. And he looked over and he went, hello, Mr. Hopkins, how's Practical Classics? And I thought, what a class act you are, because I'm nobody and you just remembered my name. That's class.
100%. What an awesome story.
Yeah, it was a pretty, well, at the time, it seared into my memory, partly through terror, but partly through joy of being able to meet a legend and meet a hero, and him not turn out to be a disappointment, which is another great thing, you know.
Oh, well, that is a brilliant place to leave it. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us, Danny, and entertaining my mixture of questions about cars and everything else, really.
Well, Andy, when this is over, when this is done, I'd love to come down and visit you guys and spend an afternoon with. It'd be really nice. That
would be awesome. Yeah. For people kind of wanting to follow Danny's work, have a little look at Practical Classics Official on Instagram. You can pick up obviously a copy of the magazine in pretty much every newsagent, or I think you can get online at practicalclassics.co.uk.
Practicalclassics.co.uk or greatmagazines.com. That's where you can find it.
Perfect. If there's anyone out there who'd be interested in chatting live with myself or Steph, then please drop us a DM. We can have a chat about getting you on as well. Massive thank you to everyone for watching. Happy New Year to you all. We'll be saving this chat to our stories and IGTV. Also putting it onto Facebook and YouTube so you can catch up on any bits that you missed. Please give it a like, drop a comment, tag your mate. We'll see you all again soon. Take care, stay safe. Thank you very much, Danny. It's a pleasure.
Cheers, chat.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.